Think you know everything about the 1976 disco-era comedy Car Wash? Think again. From Danny DeVito's mysteriously vanished scenes to Richard Pryor filming while high on cocaine, this cult classic harbors secrets darker than its sudsy exterior. Behind the catchy Rose Royce soundtrack and ensemble laughs lie bizarre production choices, rejected televangelists, and a future MTV VJ whose voice echoed through the film years before music television existed. Fact 1. Danny DeVito's disappearing act. Before Danny DeVito became the beloved angry dispatcher Louis De Palma on the hit TV show Taxi, he had a completely different role that most people never got to see. In 1976, DeVito and actress Brooke Adams were cast as Joe and Terry, a bickering couple who owned a hot dog stand called Big Joe's Doghouse, located right next to the deluxe car wash where all the main action takes place. The two actors didn't just film a quick cameo appearance either. They shot substantial scenes with full dialogue and character development that were meant to be woven throughout the entire movie. Their storyline showed the daily ups and downs of running a small food business, with Joe and Terry having relationship arguments while serving customers. In one deleted scene, they're shown arguing about Terry looking at another man while they're stopped at a traffic light on their way to work. Another cut scene had them discussing their work while preparing breakfast for their first customers of the day. What makes this situation particularly strange is that their roles weren't trimmed for time or pacing issues like most deleted scenes. Instead, nearly everything they filmed was removed from the theatrical version, leaving only brief glimpses of them in the background where you can barely tell who they are. If you watch the original theater release carefully, you might spot Brooke Adams waiting by a phone booth when another character makes a call. But that's about it. The mystery deepened when Car Wash made its television debut on NBC's Monday Night at the Movies in 1978. Suddenly, DeVito and Adams were back in the movie with their scenes restored, giving TV audiences a completely different version of the film than moviegoers had seen 2 years earlier. Fact 2. The great TV version switch. When Car Wash made its network television premiere on NBC Monday Night at the Movies in 1978, viewers who had seen the original theatrical release 2 years earlier were in for a surprise. The TV version was essentially a different movie, thanks to some unusual editing decisions by network censors that created one of the strangest alternate cuts in film history. The changes weren't just about cleaning up language for broadcast television, which was standard practice in the 70s. NBC censors took issue with the character of Lindy, played by Antonio Fargas, who was openly gay and worked at the car wash as a flamboyant drag queen. Many of Lindy's scenes were either heavily trimmed or completely removed from the broadcast version because network executives felt his confident sexuality was too controversial for prime-time television audiences. However, cutting all those scenes created a serious problem for the broadcasters. The movie was now significantly shorter than the time slot NBC had purchased for it, which meant they needed to fill the missing minutes somehow. Rather than padding the broadcast with extra commercials or finding different content, the network made an unusual decision to dig into the vault of deleted footage from the original production. This is where Danny DeVito and Brooke Adams came back into the picture. Their substantial scenes as the hot dog stand owners Joe and Terry, which had been mysteriously cut from the theatrical release, were suddenly restored and inserted throughout the TV version. The subplot about their relationship troubles and daily business operations was woven back into the film, giving television audiences a completely different viewing experience than people who had paid to see it in theaters. The result was that two distinct versions of Car Wash existed, each telling the story with different characters and storylines emphasized depending on whether you watched it on the big screen or at home on television. Fact 3. Reverend Ike said no thanks. One of the most memorable characters in Car Wash is Daddy Rich, the gold-dripping televangelist who preaches the gospel of prosperity while collecting donations from the car wash workers. What most people don't know is that this flamboyant character wasn't originally created for Richard Pryor at all, but was instead written specifically for a real-life preacher who was famous across America in the 1970s. Reverend Ike, whose real name was Frederick Ickreen Coetter II, was a charismatic televangelist known for his flashy lifestyle and controversial messages about how God wanted his followers to be wealthy. He drove expensive cars, wore expensive suits, and preached from lavish churches while telling his congregation that poverty was a sin and that faith could lead to financial success. His catchphrases and over-the-top personality made him a perfect target for satire. Director Michael Schultz was trying to get Reverend Ike to appear in the film playing himself, essentially making fun of his own public persona. According to Schultz, the real preacher actually came to Universal Studios and met with the filmmakers about taking the role. At first, Reverend Ike seemed very interested in the project and appeared excited about the opportunity to be in a major Hollywood movie. However, after thinking it over, the televangelist ultimately decided to turn down the role. He apparently realized that playing a satirical version of himself might damage his carefully crafted public image and hurt his real ministry. As Schultz explained, Reverend Ike figured that he would essentially be making fun of himself in a way that could backfire with his actual followers. Once Reverend Ike declined the part, the filmmakers turned to Richard Pryor, who had already developed some preacher characterizations in his stand-up comedy routines. The role of Daddy Rich became one of Pryor's most memorable cameo performances. Fact 4. Pryor's cocaine confession. Richard Pryor's performance as the charismatic preacher Daddy Rich in Car Wash is considered one of his most memorable cameo appearances. But years later, the comedian revealed a disturbing truth about his state of mind during filming. In his autobiography, Prior Convictions and Other Life Sentences, Pryor made a shocking admission about his experience working on the movie that cast his seemingly effortless performance in a completely different light. According to Pryor's own written account, he was heavily under the influence of cocaine during the entire 2-day shoot for his scenes in Car Wash. The comedian was brutally honest about his drug use during this period of his career, explaining that his addiction was so severe that it affected his ability to understand what was happening around him on movie sets. In his book, Pryor specifically wrote about the Car Wash experience, stating that he was too coked out to know any better while filming his role. Even more surprising was Pryor's confession that he didn't really comprehend what his character Daddy Rich was supposed to represent in the overall story of the film. Despite delivering what audiences and critics considered a brilliant satirical performance of a money-obsessed televangelist, Pryor admitted that he had no clear understanding of how his scenes fit into the bigger picture or what the filmmakers were trying to say with his character. This revelation adds a strange layer to watching Pryor's scenes in the movie, where he appears completely in control and fully committed to the satirical portrayal of a flamboyant preacher collecting donations from working-class people. The fact that such a polished and seemingly intentional performance came from someone who was struggling with severe substance abuse and confusion about his own role demonstrates both Pryor's natural comedic talent and the tragic reality of his personal struggles during this period of his career. Fact 5. MTV's future voice. Throughout Car Wash, the fictional radio station KGYS provides a constant soundtrack of music and chatter that helps tie the movie together, but one of those disc jockey voices belonged to someone who would later become a television icon in ways no one could have predicted. J.J. Jackson, whose deep voice can be heard as one of the radio personalities broadcasting from the made-up station, was working as a well-established rock DJ in Los Angeles when he contributed his vocal talents to the film in 1976. At the time of filming, Jackson was already a veteran of the radio industry with more than a decade of experience behind the microphone. He had started his career at WBCN, a legendary freeform rock station in Boston, where he had the opportunity to introduce audiences to major acts like Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, and The Who. By 1971, he had moved to Los Angeles to work at KLOS-FM as one of the original rock DJs on the station, a job he would keep for 10 years. What makes Jackson's appearance in Car Wash particularly fascinating is what happened 5 years later. In 1981, when a new cable television network called MTV launched with the concept of playing music videos around the clock, they needed hosts who could bridge the gap between radio and television. Jackson was selected as one of the original 5 video jockeys, or VJs as they became known, alongside Nina Blackwood, Mark Goodman, Alan Hunter, and Martha Quinn. His work in Car Wash essentially served as an unintentional audition tape for music television, showcasing his ability to provide engaging commentary that complemented musical content. Jackson's smooth radio delivery and knowledge of rock music, which audiences could hear woven throughout the Car Wash scenes, would become the foundation for his role in launching one of the most influential television networks of the 1980s. Fact 6. Soundtrack before script. In most Hollywood productions, the music soundtrack is one of the final elements added to a film, typically recorded and mixed during post-production after all the scenes have been shot and edited together. However, director Michael Schultz made an unusual decision for Car Wash that completely reversed this traditional filmmaking process and created a unique experience for both the actors and the audience. The entire soundtrack album by the funk group Rose Royce was recorded and completed before a single scene was filmed, which was almost unheard of in movie production at the time. This wasn't just a few songs either, but the complete musical score that would eventually accompany the finished film, including the hit title track, Car Wash, that would go on to reach #1 on the charts and become one of the biggest disco singles of the 1970s. Schultz made this unconventional choice because he wanted the actors to actually hear and respond to the same music that audiences would eventually hear when watching the completed movie. Instead of having to imagine what the soundtrack might sound like, or perform their scenes in silence with music added later, the cast could listen to the Rose Royce tracks while they were acting, and let the rhythm and energy of the songs influence their performances naturally. This approach meant that when you watch the actors dancing, moving, or simply going about their work at the car wash, they're genuinely responding to the music you're hearing, rather than trying to sync up with sounds that would be added months later in a recording studio. The decision helped create the seamless integration between music and action that makes Car Wash feel more like a musical than a traditional comedy, with the soundtrack becoming almost like another character in the film rather than just background accompaniment. Fact 7. Bill Duke's revolutionary debut. When audiences first encountered Bill Duke in Car Wash, they were watching the film debut of someone who would become one of Hollywood's most recognizable tough guys, though his career path would prove far more complex and impressive than anyone could have predicted from his first role. Duke played Abdullah Muhammad Akbar, a militant black Muslim character who worked at the car wash but struggled with anger and resentment about workplace tensions and social injustices. At 6 feet 4.5 inches tall with his closely shaved head, Duke cut an imposing figure even in his very first movie appearance. His character, Abdullah, was formerly known as Duane before converting to Islam, and Duke brought a fierce intensity to the role that made him stand out among the ensemble cast. The character served as one of the more serious elements in the otherwise lighthearted comedy, providing dramatic weight to balance the film's musical numbers and comedic situations. What makes Duke's debut particularly remarkable is how it launched a career that would span multiple decades and genres in completely unexpected ways. After Car Wash, he would go on to become a familiar face in action movies, appearing alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger in both Commando and Predator, where he played the memorable character Mac Elliott, a tough soldier who wielded a minigun against an alien hunter in the jungle. However, Duke didn't limit himself to acting in front of the camera. He became equally successful as a director, helming episodes of major television series like Miami Vice, Dallas, Hill Street Blues, and Magnum P.I. He also directed feature films including A Rage in Harlem and Deep Cover, establishing himself as a major force behind the camera as well. Duke has been called the godfather of African-American cinema for his contributions to filmmaking, all starting with his powerful debut performance as the revolutionary-minded car wash worker in 1976. Fact 8. Ivan Dixon's final bow. Ivan Dixon's appearance in Car Wash as Lonnie, the level-headed straw boss trying to keep the car wash running smoothly, holds special significance as the final acting role of a performer who had already made the difficult decision to step away from the spotlight. Dixon was best known to television audiences as Staff Sergeant James Kinchlow on the popular World War II sitcom Hogan's Heroes, where he played the communications expert among the prisoners of war from 1965 to 1970. However, Dixon had become increasingly dissatisfied with his role on Hogan's Heroes because he felt the character was too limited and didn't challenge him as an actor. He was also frustrated that as one of the few African-American actors with a regular role on a major television series, he was still playing a supporting character rather than taking on more substantial parts that could showcase his full range of talents. Dixon made the bold decision to leave the hit show after 5 seasons, making him the only main cast member to depart before the series ended. By the time Car Wash was filmed in 1976, Dixon had already shifted his focus toward directing and producing, working behind the camera on television episodes and feature films. His role as Lonnie became his farewell performance as an actor. Though audiences didn't know it at the time, Dixon brought a quiet dignity and wisdom to the character, serving as the moral center of the car wash ensemble and trying to mentor the younger employees. After Car Wash, Dixon dedicated himself entirely to directing, working on hundreds of television episodes for series like The Waltons, Magnum P.I., The Rockford Files, and In the Heat of the Night. He also directed feature films including Trouble Man and the controversial The Spook Who Sat by the Door, establishing himself as a successful filmmaker while leaving his acting career permanently behind. Fact 9. Professor Corey's urine sample chase. One of the most hilariously absurd sequences in Car Wash involves a case of mistaken identity that perfectly captures the chaotic energy of the entire film. Throughout the day, radio news reports keep warning listeners about a dangerous individual known as the Mad Pop Bottle Bomber, who has been terrorizing Los Angeles by fashioning explosive devices out of soda bottles and targeting small businesses around the city. When veteran comedian Professor Irwin Corey arrives at the car wash, clutching a bottle and acting somewhat confused and disoriented, the employees and customers immediately jump to the conclusion that they've spotted the notorious bomber everyone has been hearing about on the radio. Corey, who was known for his wild-haired appearance and eccentric professor persona, fit the general description that had been broadcast, and his unusual behavior only added to their suspicions. What follows is a frantic chase scene around the car wash premises as workers and customers try to apprehend what they believe is a dangerous criminal. The scene becomes increasingly comedic as Corey's character stumbles around the facility while people pursue him, creating mayhem among the cars, soap, and water spraying everywhere. The chase involves multiple people running through the car wash equipment, slipping on wet surfaces, and generally turning the normally organized operation into complete pandemonium. The big reveal that makes the entire sequence even more ridiculous is that Corey's character was never the bomber at all. The bottle he was carrying so protectively didn't contain any kind of explosive device but was simply a urine sample that he needed to deliver to a hospital for a medical test, most likely related to liver function. The poor man was just trying to complete a routine medical errand when he got caught up in the hysteria, turning an innocent trip to the car wash into an unforgettable comedy of errors. Fact 10. The vanished car wash location. For movie fans hoping to visit the famous deluxe car wash from the film, there's disappointing news. The actual location where all the memorable scenes were shot no longer exists. The real car wash that served as the setting for the entire movie was located at 610 South Rampart Boulevard at West 6th Street in Los Angeles, positioned on the southeast corner near Lafayette Park in the downtown area. The filmmakers chose this particular car wash because it was a fully functioning business that came equipped with all the modern car washing equipment and facilities they needed for their production. Rather than building elaborate sets on a studio lot, director Michael Schultz decided to use an authentic working car wash, which gave the film a genuine feel that audiences could immediately recognize as real rather than artificial. The location was perfect for the movie's needs, with plenty of space for the ensemble cast to move around, multiple washing bays for different scenes, and the adjacent area where the fictional Big Joe's Doghouse hot dog stand was supposed to be located. The busy urban setting also provided the right atmosphere for the story, capturing the energy of Los Angeles working-class life in the 1970s. However, sometime during the late 1980s, the car wash was torn down as part of urban development in the area. The iconic location where Richard Pryor preached as Daddy Rich, where the Pointer Sisters performed their musical number, and where all the daily workplace comedy and drama unfolded was completely erased from the Los Angeles landscape. In its place, developers built a generic strip mall that bears no resemblance to the movie location. This means that unlike many other famous movie locations that fans can still visit decades later, the setting of Car Wash exists now only in the film itself, making it a piece of lost Los Angeles history. Fact 11. George Carlin wrote his own lines. George Carlin's appearance in Car Wash as a frustrated taxi driver searching for a prostitute who skipped out on her fare might seem like a small role, but it showcased the legendary comedian's creative control and his ability to bring his unique comedic voice to any project. Rather than simply reading lines from Joel Schumacher's screenplay, Carlin was given the freedom to improvise and write his own dialogue for the character, allowing his distinctive style of humor to shine through in every scene. Carlin played a bewildered cabbie who keeps showing up at the car wash throughout the day, desperately looking for a woman named Marlene who had run away without paying him. The character appears frustrated and increasingly agitated as the day goes on, but Carlin's approach to the role was entirely his own creation. He crafted dialogue that reflected his observational comedy style and his talent for finding humor in everyday situations that most people would find simply annoying or stressful. This creative freedom was somewhat unusual for movie productions, where actors are typically expected to stick closely to the written script, especially in smaller supporting roles. However, the filmmakers recognized that Carlin's comedic genius was worth incorporating into the film, even if it meant allowing him to deviate from the original screenplay. His improvised lines and natural delivery added an authentic feel to his character's growing desperation and confusion. The decision to let Carlin write his own material proved to be smart, as his scenes provide some of the film's most genuinely funny moments. His character's interactions with the car wash employees and his mounting frustration over the missing fare perfectly captured Carlin's ability to find comedy in life's minor irritations, bringing his signature verbal style to the ensemble cast and adding another layer of authentic humor to the movie's chaotic day at the car wash. Fact 12. A Broadway dream deferred. Before Car Wash ever became a movie, the creators had an entirely different vision for how audiences would experience their story about a day in the life of working-class employees at a Los Angeles car wash. The original concept was to develop the project as a Broadway musical, complete with an elaborate stage production that would feature a full-scale replica of a functioning car wash built right on the theater stage. The producers were excited about this ambitious theatrical concept because they believed it would create a unique and immersive experience for Broadway audiences. They envisioned theatergoers watching the musical numbers and dramatic scenes unfold around an actual working car wash, with all the equipment, water, soap, and visual spectacle that would entail. The idea was that if the stage production proved successful with critics and audiences, they could then adapt the musical into a movie version that would reach an even wider audience. However, when the producers pitched this Broadway concept to Ned Tannen, who was the president of Universal Pictures at the time, he had a completely different idea about how the project should proceed. Tannen saw the potential for the story to work directly as a film without needing to go through the expensive and risky process of mounting a major Broadway production first. He convinced the producers that they should skip the theatrical stage entirely and develop their car wash concept straight into a movie. This decision proved to be pivotal for the project's success, as it allowed the filmmakers to use an actual working car wash location instead of trying to recreate one artificially on a stage. The authentic setting gave the movie a realistic feel that might have been harder to achieve in a theater, and the film's eventual success with audiences and critics proved that Tannen's instincts about bypassing Broadway were correct. Fact 13. Cannes controversy and American critics. Car Wash achieved something that most American comedies never experience when it was selected for competition at the 1977 Cannes Film Festival, one of the most prestigious film festivals in the world. The movie was actually nominated for the Palme d'Or, the festival's highest honor, which put it in competition alongside serious dramatic films from renowned international directors for the festival's top prize. According to director Michael Schultz, the reception of his film at Cannes revealed a fascinating cultural divide that highlighted different attitudes toward popular entertainment versus high art. The jury that year included critics and filmmakers from various countries, including two American critics named Pauline Kael and Rex Reed, along with French directors and other European judges who would ultimately decide the festival's winners. Schultz later revealed that the European members of the jury were enthusiastic about Car Wash, praising it as a fresh and innovative look at American society in the 1970s. The international judges felt that using the car wash setting as a way to examine working-class life and social dynamics was creative and insightful, and they appreciated the film's energy and authentic portrayal of diverse characters working together in an urban environment. However, the two American critics on the panel had a completely different reaction to the film. They dismissed Car Wash as merely pop culture rather than serious art culture, refusing to support it for the festival's major awards despite the enthusiasm of their European colleagues. This cultural clash between the American and European judges created a deadlock that prevented the film from winning the Palme d'Or. As a compromise, the Cannes Film Festival created a special technical grand prize specifically for Car Wash, and also gave Norman Whitfield a separate award for the film's outstanding musical soundtrack, allowing the festival to honor the movie without fully endorsing it as high art. Fact 14. The gay character's groundbreaking response. One of the most powerful moments in Car Wash occurs during a confrontation between two characters that results in what many film historians consider one of cinema's most memorable responses to prejudice, homophobia. The scene involves Antonio Fargas, who plays Lindy, an openly gay employee who works at the car wash, while expressing his identity through flamboyant dress and confident behavior that was extremely rare for LGBTQ characters in mainstream Hollywood films during the 1970s. The confrontation happens when Bill Duke's character Abdullah Mohammed Akbar, the militant black Muslim who struggles with anger and resentment, directly challenges Lindy about his sexuality and cross-dressing. Abdullah criticizes Lindy's appearance and lifestyle in harsh terms, representing the kind of homophobic attitudes that were unfortunately common and largely unchallenged in movies of that era. Instead of being intimidated or backing down from the confrontation, Lindy delivers a comeback that completely turns the tables on his attacker with remarkable wit and confidence. His response, "I'm more man than you'll ever be," and more woman than you'll ever get became one of the most quoted lines from the entire film and demonstrated a level of self-assurance and pride that was groundbreaking for gay characters in mainstream cinema. Film historian Vito Russo, who studied LGBTQ representation in movies, specifically highlighted this exchange as being significant because it showed a gay character who was not portrayed as a victim or an object of ridicule. Instead, Lindy was presented as someone who could defend himself verbally and intellectually while maintaining his dignity and pride in his identity. The line was considered potentially revolutionary because it showed a gay character who refused to be ashamed or apologetic, instead turning the confrontation back on the person who was trying to intimidate him. Fact 15. Local DJ voices created fictional radio. The constant stream of music and radio chatter that flows throughout Car Wash wasn't created by actors reading scripted lines in a recording studio, but instead featured the authentic voices of real Los Angeles radio personalities who were already familiar to local audiences in the 1970s. The filmmakers made the creative decision to use actual disc jockeys from the Los Angeles area to voice the fictional radio station KGYS, which serves as the musical backbone of the entire movie. Among the real radio professionals who contributed their voices to the film were Jay Butler, Rod McGrew, Serena C., Grant, and Cleveland's Billy Bass, all of whom were working at various Los Angeles radio stations during the time of production. These weren't just random voice actors trying to sound like radio DJs, but experienced broadcasters who brought their genuine on-air personalities and professional delivery styles to the movie's soundtrack. The decision to use real radio talent gave Car Wash an authentic feel that would have been difficult to achieve with traditional voice acting. The disc jockeys delivered news updates, weather reports, music introductions, and casual banter with the natural rhythm and energy that came from years of actual broadcasting experience. Their voices helped create the illusion that audiences were listening to a real radio station rather than a manufactured soundtrack designed specifically for the movie. This approach was particularly effective because the radio station serves as more than just background noise in Car Wash. The fictional KGYS acts almost like a narrator throughout the film, providing commentary on the day's events, delivering important plot information like news about the Mad Pop bottle bomber, and maintaining the energy that keeps the story moving forward. By using genuine Los Angeles radio personalities, the filmmakers created a realistic audio landscape that made the Car Wash feel like it existed in the real world rather than on a movie set.